The security badge hit my desk like a gavel. "You're done here, Dyer. Pack it up." Reed Voss said it right in the middle of our Tuesday engineering meeting. 12 people in that room, people I'd worked next to for over 2 decades. He didn't pull me aside, didn't call me into his office. Just said it out loud, in front of everyone, like he was canceling a catering order. "My name is Nolan Dyer. I'm 54. I'd been a systems engineer at Irongate Systems Corp in Dallas for 23 years. Or I was until that Tuesday. The room went silent. Beverly Crane, who'd been in systems integration since before I got there, looked down at her notepad. Drew from procurement stared at the window. Lane, our floor security guy, shifted in his seat near the door. Nobody said a word. Voss called me a legacy bottleneck. Said the company needed people who could think forward, not anchor it to the past. He used the word anchor, like it was an insult. I said understood, picked up my folder, and walked out. That was it. 23 years. Gone before the coffee got cold. I want to be straight with you about something. When people tell these stories, they always make themselves sound calm, and collected the whole way through. I wasn't. I drove out of that parking garage, got about 6 blocks, and pulled into a strip mall lot next to a dry cleaner. Sat there, maybe 10 minutes, not crying, just blank. Like my brain needed a minute to catch up to what just happened. Then I drove home. My son Cole was finishing his 2nd year at Georgia Tech. Tuition wasn't cheap. I had a mortgage on a house in Garland that still needed a new roof, and now I had a Tuesday with nowhere to be. The calls started before I even got my jacket off. Beverly first, then Drew, a couple of the younger engineers I'd mentored. Everyone was rattled. I told them all the same thing. Keep your heads down, don't make noise, take care of yourselves. Last thing I needed was good people losing their jobs on my account. What I didn't tell any of them was that by the time I went to bed that night, I'd already started noticing the car. Dark blue sedan, parked across the street. Different plates 2 days in a row, same make and model. Maybe nothing, maybe something. I wrote down the plates both nights and didn't say a word to anyone. The first week without work is strange. You wake up at the same time out of habit. You pour coffee. You sit down at the kitchen table and then realize you have nowhere to be and nothing that needs doing before noon. I cleaned the garage, reorganized my tackle box, watched 2 innings of a Rangers game at 1 in the afternoon and felt like I was doing something wrong. Irongate sent a letter Thursday freezing my pension review, citing a pending compliance audit, standard intimidation. Then a law firm I'd never heard of sent a letter implying I'd removed proprietary data on my way out. I hadn't touched anything. It was a bluff, and not a very good one, but it was enough to make me call a lawyer. The lawyer I called was Walt Greer. He'd done contract work for Stuart Caldwell years back, and I trusted him. I told him about the letters. He said, sit tight, document everything, don't respond to anything directly. Good advice. Friday morning, 2 people knocked on my front door. The woman showed me an FBI badge. Her name was Renee Holt. The man with her didn't say much. She asked if they could come in. I made coffee. She put a folder on my kitchen table and said, "What do you know about Pacifica Global Consulting?" I knew the name. It had crossed my desk about 8 months back in a procurement review. A consulting firm with vague credentials and a Pacific Rim mailing address that didn't add up to anything real. I flagged it as suspicious, I said. Nothing came of it internally. It came of something, Renee said, confirmed front for Chinese military intelligence. They've been running acquisition operations against U.S. defense contractors for the better part of a year. She slid a photo across the table. Voss, shaking hands with a man I recognized from a classified briefing 2 years prior. The kind of briefing where you sign extra paperwork just to be in the room. Your new CEO signed a consulting agreement with Pacifica 4 days ago, she said. I sat back. There's a clause in Irongate's Pentagon contract, she continued. Annex B, the digital certificate clause. Any transfer of your radar detection technology requires your personal digital authorization. Yours specifically because you were lead engineer when the contract was executed. She let that land for a second. Voss can't move the technology without you. So he moved you instead. He targeted me before he took the job, I said. It wasn't a question. 4 months before, the termination wasn't impulsive. You were the obstacle they planned around from the start. I looked at the photo again. Voss looked relaxed in it. Comfortable. What do you need from me? I asked. Right now, stay available and don't touch those authorization codes. We're building the case, but we could use someone with access to the inside. I thought for a moment. Stuart Caldwell's grandson works there. Owen, he's 26, just started as a junior engineer. I've known him since he was a kid. Can you reach him? I think so. Renee closed the folder. One more thing, the car outside. So they'd seen it too. That's ours, she said. Protective detail. Voss needs you alive to get those codes, but people under this kind of pressure do unpredictable things. We want eyes on you. After they left, I stood in my kitchen for a while. drank the rest of my coffee, looked out the window at that blue sedan. 23 years of quiet work. Keep your head down. Do it right, protect the contract, and the whole time, somebody had been calculating exactly how to use that against me. I picked up my phone and called Owen Caldwell. Owen picked up on the second ring. I kept it short, told him I needed to meet, somewhere quiet, not near Iron Gate. He said he knew a diner off 635 that nobody from the office used. We met that evening. He looked like his grandfather. Same eyes, same way of sitting still while taking everything in. He was 26, but he listened like someone older. I laid it out for him plain. Voss, Pacifica, the Pentagon Clause, the FBI. I didn't dramatize it, just facts in order. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. I knew something was wrong, he said. He fired 3 other senior engineers the same week he let you go. All of them had been on the original contract team. That was new information. He's been bringing in outside consultants. Owen continued. People nobody recognizes. They ask a lot of questions about the radar frequency architecture, but they don't have clearance to be asking those questions. I thought it was sloppy onboarding. Now I'm thinking it wasn't sloppy at all. I told him what Renee had asked for, not documents. Not anything that would put him at risk. Just stay in the room, stay visible, and ask questions. What kind of questions? Technical ones, things a junior engineer would naturally ask. About authentication protocols, transfer procedures, how the system handoffs work. Let them answer on the record. He thought about it. In the meeting notes, every internal meeting gets logged. If they answer wrong or answer in a way that shows they're planning something, it's documented without anyone having to plant anything. Owen nodded slowly. My grandfather needs to know about this. Not yet. Not until we have more. If Stewart reacts too early. Voss gets spooked and moves the timeline. He agreed. We split the check and went our separate ways. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't felt since Tuesday morning. Not confidence, exactly. More like direction. Like the compass had stopped spinning. The pressure from Voss's side picked up the following week. Monday brought a second letter from that law firm, this one more specific. It alleged I had accessed proprietary schematics after my termination date, which was a lie, and threatened civil action if I discussed internal Iron Gate matters with outside parties. It was designed to make me feel surrounded. Tuesday, they rescinded my health coverage retroactively by 2 weeks, which created a billing problem with my doctor's office that took 2 hours on the phone to sort out. Petty, but effective at eating up time and energy. Wednesday was when it got personal. Cole called from Atlanta. His voice was tight, trying to stay even. Dad, 2 guys came to campus today. Suits. They were asking my roommate questions about me, about you. Campus security got involved and walked them off, but they had photos. Recent ones looked like they were taken near the apartment. I kept my voice steady. Are you okay? Yeah, weirded out. What's going on? I'll explain everything soon. Tonight, I need you to pack a bag and stay with Derek's family in Savannah for a few days. Don't argue with me on this one. Dad. Cole, a pause. Okay. I hung up and called Renee before I'd even put the phone down. She picked up immediately. I told her about Cole. We know, she said. It was a Pacifica contractor, not Voss directly. They're trying to establish leverage. It tells us they're getting nervous about the timeline. I want protection on my son. Already in motion. There will be someone near him by tonight, a beat. This is actually useful, Nolan. It shows escalation. It goes into the case file. I understood that. I also understood that understanding it didn't make it feel any better. What it did do was remove whatever hesitation I had left. I called Walt Greer and told him I needed him to make contact with Stuart Caldwell's personal attorney, not Iron Gate's corporate counsel. Stuart's own lawyer, the one he'd used for 30 years. Walt asked why the distinction mattered. I told him because corporate counsel answers to the board, and right now I didn't know which board members Voss had already worked on. Walt called back in 2 hours. Stuart's attorney, a man named Hal Briggs, was willing to meet. I sat across from Briggs the next morning in his office in Uptown, gave him everything. The FBI contact, the Pacifica connection, the Annex B clause, the escalating pressure campaign. He listened without interrupting, which is the sign of a good lawyer. When I finished, he said Stuart needs to hear this directly, I know. But if he moves too fast and confronts Voss before we have the full package, Voss disappears and takes whatever he's already copied with him. Briggs tapped his pen on the legal pad. What do you need from Stuart's side? 2 things. First, I need the board to formally reinstate my security clearance. Not a handshake, not a phone call. A documented board resolution so it's on record and Voss can't challenge it. That requires a special session. Stuart controls 48% and has charter veto rights. He can call it. Second, I need a board member inside that Friday meeting who isn't compromised. Someone who can witness everything firsthand. Briggs nodded. Paula Whitfield, she's been on the board since 2009, former Pentagon advisor. Stewart trusts her completely and she has no financial relationship with Voss. I knew the name. She was the right call. Set it up, I said. Meanwhile, Owen was doing his part. In 2 consecutive internal engineering meetings that week, he asked questions. Simple ones framed exactly like a junior engineer trying to understand the system. Things like, when the radar data package transfers to an external platform, which authentication layer takes precedence, the hardware certificate or the software token? And if the digital certificate in Annex B gets superseded by a partner agreement, does the Pentagon notification requirement still apply? Voss's imported consultants answered both questions in detail. The answers went into the official meeting notes, time-stamped, distributed to all attendees, including 2 board members. Owen texted me that night, they answered. You were right. They had no idea what they were documenting. I read it twice and set my phone down. The board held its special session Thursday morning. Stuart Caldwell called it under charter provisions, listed it as an emergency governance review. 7 members attended. They voted 6-1 to reinstate my security clearance pending a formal review of my termination. The one dissenting vote was a board member who'd been brought on 6 months ago, right around when Voss was being recruited. Briggs called me with the result. You're back on record. Paula Whitfield has been briefed. She'll be at Friday's meeting. Renee called an hour later. Her team had been monitoring Voss's communications. He's under direct pressure from Pacifica to deliver by end of week. They're threatening to expose his financial arrangements if he doesn't produce. He's going to try to push the transfer through at Friday's board meeting, presented as a routine joint venture approval. She paused. We'll be ready. But we need him to sign the transfer authorization in the room in front of witnesses. Once his signature is on that document, the case is closed. He'll do it, I said. He thinks he's already won. One more thing. He blocked your system credentials this morning. Even with the clearance reinstated, you won't be able to log in to pull up your presentation from the network. I almost smiled. Tell Owen. 20 minutes later, Owen texted back. Already on it, I'll have a clean local copy loaded on a standalone laptop. Meet me in the parking garage at 9:15 Friday came in gray and cold. The kind of morning that feels like it's waiting for something. I got up at 6, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table for a while. No emails to check. No project updates to review. Just the quiet house and the sound of the neighbor's sprinklers going off on a timer. I thought about Cole down in Savannah, probably still asleep. I thought about the 23 years I'd put into that building and what it would feel like to walk back into it today. Then I stopped thinking and got dressed. I wore my regular clothes, dark slacks, a gray button-down, nothing that said I was trying too hard. I'd spent enough years in that building to know that the people who dressed for the drama usually lost it. Owen was in the parking garage at 9:12, 3 minutes early. He had a laptop bag over one shoulder and looked like he hadn't slept much. He handed me a visitor badge and said, "Clearance is confirmed on the system." I checked at 7 a.m. and again at 8. Voss know you checked? He knows someone did. He doesn't know it was me. Owen adjusted the strap on his bag. Grandfather is already upstairs. He got here at 8:30. Paula Whitfield is in the conference room. Voss tried to move the meeting again, sent an email at 6:45 asking to push it to 2 p.m. Stewart replied at 6:47 saying no. I nodded. A man who tries to delay twice is a man who's running out of moves. We rode the elevator to the 18th floor. The doors opened and the space felt different from how I remembered it. Voss had gutted the character out of it. White walls, chrome fixtures, the kind of office design that's supposed to signal modernity, but just signals that nobody who works there has been around long enough to put anything personal on a shelf. Stuart Caldwell was standing outside the boardroom. 71 years old, yellow legal pad in one hand, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked exactly like himself. He shook my hand and held it a beat longer than necessary. I owe you an apology, Nolan. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. Voss came out of his office 2 minutes later. He was mid-conversation with one of his imported consultants and didn't see me until he was about 15 feet away. When he did, he stopped walking. The consultant kept talking for a second before realizing Voss wasn't listening anymore. Voss recovered fast. He doesn't have authorization to be on this floor. Stewart held up a single sheet of paper. Board resolution from yesterday's special session. He does. That resolution is being challenged. Corporate counsel hasn't signed off. Corporate counsel works for the board, Stewart said. Not the other way around. Voss looked at me, not the easy dismissive look from that Tuesday meeting. Something different. He was calculating, running options, and finding fewer of them than he expected. This is a mistake, he said. Then you can say that in the room, Stewart replied and opened the boardroom door. 11 board members. Paula Whitfield sat midway down the left side, notepad open, pen ready. She gave me a single nod when I walked in. Spencer Aldridge was at the far end, the one who'd voted against my reinstatement the day before. He looked at the table when I passed him. Renee had told me exactly what she needed. Let Voss present the joint venture proposal. Let him get far enough to introduce the transfer authorization document. The moment he signed it, her team would move, not before. A signature in front of 11 witnesses was the case. Everything else was paperwork. So I sat down, opened Owen's laptop, and waited. Voss ran the first 20 minutes of the meeting like a man who believed he was still in control. He presented the Pacifica Partnership as a strategic international venture, used the words market expansion and shared infrastructure and competitive positioning 4 times each. It was polished. If you didn't know what you were looking at, it sounded reasonable. Then he introduced the transfer authorization document and slid copies down the table. I let him finish his sentence. Then I said, "Can I respond to the technical components?" Voss looked at Stewart. Stewart said, "That's why he's here." I connected the laptop to the room's display screen and pulled up the first slide. I didn't editorialize. I didn't call Voss names or make speeches. I just walked through the data the way I'd walked through engineering specs for 23 years. Here's what Annex B says. Here's what this transfer document authorizes. Here's the gap between those two things. The second slide was the financial records. The $2 and $8 million already moved to offshore accounts. The $9 million contingent on delivery. Shell companies with addresses that traced to a building in Hong Kong that also housed 3 other Pacifica-connected entities. Paula Whitfield leaned forward. "Raid, tell me this is fabricated." Voss said it was, said I was a disgruntled former employee with access to document editing software and a reason to cause damage. His voice was steady. He'd prepared for this part. I clicked to the next slide. It was an audio transcript, time-stamped and unverified by Sylvia Hardy's team at NSA. Voss's own voice from a recorded call 3 weeks prior. "Dyer's the only real obstacle. Once he's out of the picture, the transfer is clean. Pacifica gets what they need before the quarter closes." The room was very quiet. I clicked to the next slide. Owen's meeting notes, 2 sessions, both formally logged, both distributed to board members as standard minutes. Voss's consultants answering detailed questions about authentication protocols and transfer procedures on record without realizing what they were documenting. Spencer Aldridge, the dissenting vote from yesterday, looked at the notes for a long time. Then he looked at Voss. Voss made one more attempt. He said the audio could be manipulated, that the context was being misrepresented, that the board was being used as a stage for a personal grievance. He said it with conviction. Then I picked up my phone and called Troy Bassett at Pentagon Procurement on speaker. Troy had been expecting the call. I asked him to confirm, for the record, that my digital authorization credentials remained valid and unchanged under the terms of Annex B. He confirmed. I asked him to confirm that any transfer of radar detection technology without my explicit written consent would void the contract and trigger an immediate federal investigation. He confirmed that too. I set the phone down. Voss reached for the transfer authorization document in front of him. I think in that moment he was still calculating, still looking for a version of this that worked out. His hand touched the edge of the paper. The boardroom door opened. Renee Holt walked in with 2 agents behind her. She didn't raise her voice. "Ride Voss, FBI. Please stand up." He stood. I don't know why. Maybe it was reflex. "You're being placed under arrest for conspiracy to commit economic espionage, violations of the Espionage Act, and money laundering in connection with the transfer of classified defense technology to a foreign intelligence service." The cuffs went on quiet. The room watched without moving. As they walked him toward the door, he turned and looked at me. "You think this stops anything? Pacifica has other sources? Other contracts? This is 1 building in 1 city. Maybe," I said. "But you're done." They led Voss out through the main floor, past the cubicles, past the people who had watched me get walked out 3 weeks earlier. I heard later that nobody said anything, just watched. The boardroom emptied slowly. Paula Whitfield stopped next to me on her way out and said, "Good work," the way someone says it when they mean it and don't feel the need to say more. Spencer Aldridge left without making eye contact. That was fine. I didn't need anything from him. Stewart stayed until the room was empty except for the 2 of us and Owen. The old man sat down at the head of the table, put his legal pad flat in front of him, and looked at it for a moment. "I brought him in," he said. "I signed off on the search firm, approved the final hire. I didn't do the homework I should have done. He fooled people who were paid specifically not to be fooled," I said. "That's not on you." Stewart looked up. "I'm making it right," he was. 2 days later, Hal Briggs called with the formal offer. Chief Technology Officer, Aaron Gates Systems Corp. Salary $165,000 plus stock options, plus a performance structure tied to contract renewals. The offer letter was 3 pages and professionally drafted, and I read every word of it twice. Then I called Briggs back and told him I needed 2 weeks to think about it. He was quiet for a second. Stuart expected that. He said to tell you he'll wait. I spent those 2 weeks doing things I hadn't done in a long time. Drove out to Possum Kingdom Lake with my old tackle box on a Thursday, which is not something a person with a normal job can do on a Thursday. Sat on the bank for 4 hours and caught 2 small bass I threw back. Didn't think about radar frequencies or Pentagon clauses or offshore accounts. Just watched the water. Cole drove up from Atlanta that weekend. We sat on the back porch and I told him everything, the whole thing from the beginning. He listened the way his mother used to listen, completely still, not interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a bit. You knew something was wrong before the FBI even showed up, he said. The car across the street. Yeah, most people would have just been angry and filed for unemployment. I was angry, I said. That doesn't mean you stop thinking. He nodded. We sat there until it got dark and the mosquitoes found us. On day 14, I called Briggs and accepted the offer. Stuart came to my house that Sunday anyway. I think he'd already planned to, regardless of what I decided. We sat on that same back porch and he talked about what he'd built, what it had almost become, what he still wanted it to be. He was 71, and he knew he wasn't running the day-to-day much longer. He talked about Owen, about what he saw in him. He talked about the engineers who'd been fired the same week as me, 4 of them, all of whom were being offered their jobs back. I listened to all of it. When he was done, I told him I'd already called Briggs. He smiled and wrote something on his yellow legal pad. I never asked what it was. The first morning I walked back into that building as CTO, Beverly Crane was waiting near the elevator. She handed me a coffee, same way she'd done 100 times before, and said, "Took you long enough." Drew was at his desk and gave me a nod that covered everything we didn't need to say out loud. It mattered, more than the title, more than the salary. The people who'd been there through the whole thing, who'd kept their heads down and done their jobs while everything was uncertain, they were still there. That meant something. 6 months out, the picture got bigger than any of us expected. The FBI investigation into Pacifica Global Consulting spread to 7 other defense contractors, 4 more executives arrested, congressional hearings, new federal protocols for technology transfer authorizations, the kind of systemic response that only happens when a case is clean and documented and the evidence is impossible to argue with. Voss got 11 years. The sentencing report cited the deliberate targeting of a senior employee, the involvement of a minor in intimidation tactics, and the scale of financial arrangements with a foreign intelligence service. His lawyer called it excessive. The judge disagreed. Cole called me the week the news broke nationally. Dad, my engineering ethics professor brought up the Erringate case in class today, talked about it for about 20 minutes. The whole Annex B clause thing, how a single procedural safeguard stopped the whole transfer. I waited. Guy in the 3rd row recognized your name, turned around and told everyone that was my dad. A pause. I let him. I kept that one close. The pen that started this whole story, the one I used to sign the original Pentagon contract back in 2001, sits on my desk now. Owen fished it out of the trash the morning I got walked out, kept it without telling me, gave it back my first week as CTO. Nothing special to look at. Beat up ballpoint with a logo that's mostly worn off, but I know what I signed with it and I know what it cost to protect what I signed. That's enough. Here's what I want to say directly to you. If you're 50 or 55 or older, and someone in a sharp suit has recently used the word legacy to describe you, I want you to hear this. That word is not a verdict. It is a tactic. It is designed to make you feel like your experience is a liability instead of what it actually is, which is the hardest thing to replace in any organization. They will call you a bottleneck. What they mean is that you know where the bodies are buried and they cannot move freely while you're in the room. Do not go quietly. Do not file the paperwork and cash out and tell yourself it was just business. Go find the Annex B in your situation. It is there. The leverage you built over decades does not disappear because someone new walked through the door. You're not a relic, you're the foundation. And some foundations, once you understand what they are holding up, are a great deal harder to remove than anyone expected.